Hey, and welcome to another week of Libertarians at Large. My name is Eric Rautzep, and this is where we discuss the news and express a libertarian point of view on the goings-on in our nation and abroad. We welcome your comments and your questions in the chat box, so feel free to comment regularly. We may share your comment on the air. This week, I'm joined with my fellow Libertarian at Large member, Valerie Sawark. How are you doing, Valerie?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing really well.
Good.
And our special guest, Jason Spyres. How are you doing?
Hey.
Doing well.
So, Jason, tell us about yourself. You have one heck of a compelling story.
I'm just an average guy who lived an everyday life. Basically, the way I explain it is, to say it in a nutshell, I was born to a childhood that didn't provide the best opportunities at the time. My parents both loved me, but they were struggling with their own drug addictions. I grew up not realizing that the use of cannabis was necessarily illegal, because it was just around me all the time. And I was in California, so even though it was illegal, it was kind of like a joke that it was illegal, because I could literally buy cannabis off police officers. And then we passed the medical act, medical marijuana in 1998, and then it was like a real big joke, because in the middle of my town we had this big grow of cannabis, but it was supposed to be illegal. I ended up making a stupid decision to start selling cannabis. At the age of 19, I got arrested for trafficking it. My father lived in Illinois, my mother lived in California. While I was growing up, I would go back to Illinois and spend Christmas vacations there and the summer there. So I was kind of like this transplant between California and Illinois. And so then when I turned 17, I started selling pot at a very, very low level. I was making concert ticket money. I basically enjoyed the attention it got me. I enjoyed being the man or whatever that could hook you up with it more than anything else. And then when I turned 18, the whole angst, want to get out of my mom's. Go live with your dad. I go to Illinois and I find out the price of pot back there. And then I made the stupid decision to start bringing it back to Illinois. And if anything, I noticed that I got curious with the designing of it, like how to get away with it, how to actually transport it, how to avoid detection. Obviously, I didn't get too good on that. More in a second. But I really got into the engineering aspect of the logistics management, everything else. And then when I was 19, I got arrested for a box, 37 pounds of cannabis came to my door. And long story short, it's I don't really know why to this day, but I got a 30-year sentence for it. No guns, no violence. I did have a BB gun, a CO2 cartridge. So if you count that as a gun, but that was we shot each other in the foot with it. It was a joke. Literally, it was a cartridge gun. So, but while I was in prison, I had this amazing epiphany, 3 big moments that happened in my life that made me just see things totally different, and decided I wanted more for myself. And while I was there, I didn't know how to go about making myself a better life, but I knew if I got smarter, maybe that would help me figure out how to go about having a better life. So while I was there, I started studying subjects. I started economics. I've always been into politics, so I learned about political history. But then I turned to the sciences. I started learning about chemistry, organic chemistry, physics, calculus. And then do calculus before physics if someone else is going to replicate this. That'll help you a lot. And then I started seeing a lot of the injustices going on with the policies in the state of Illinois, because there's this weird dichotomy where I sold pot, which everybody kind of thinks is a joke, but in Illinois law, it was a Class X sentence. And I didn't realize what that meant at the time. But they had this compromise back in 1978. They had a constitutional convention in the state, and they wanted to go to from a punitive prison system to a corrections prison system. But you know how the sausage gets made. The deal's got to get done. And so they came up with this belief of, there's some people so bad, so vile, so reprehensible, that what they have done, they've lost their right to be rehabilitated. They've lost their right to be a upstanding citizen again. And they were intending it for crimes like, murder of a senior citizen with an aggravated weapon, human dismemberment, all kinds of things.
Yeah.
So they passed this thing called a Class X sentence, where it made it where you're X'd out of society. You know what I mean? You don't matter. You don't qualify to, receive early release credits towards, for completing any kind of rehabilitative thing. Because why let them out early? We decided it doesn't matter how much they rehabilitate themselves. They're X'd out. So, but then what happened was, you had Reagan and the Just Say No campaign, and let's get tough on drugs. And so then by the 90s, they had taken certain cannabis offenses. Now, I had 37 pounds. It was from Mexico. It was brick weed. It wasn't like the weed you have today. You know what I mean? Like, I bought the whole thing for like $8,000. So, but I had a large amount. So I wasn't just like some small little street corner guy. I own up to everything I did. But what they did is they upgraded anything that was over 11 pounds of cannabis, which back then, like 11 pounds translated to about $4,000 because it was cheap. You know what I mean? The THC count was like 3%. So, and that made you a Class X. And so I got to prison, and here's the funny part. The tough on drugs movement made cannabis be a Class X along with cocaine and all that. The second-degree murders never became a Class X.
Oh my God.
Distributing child porn never became a Class X. All other sex offenses never became a Class X. Now, I'm not trying to point fingers and say one's, we can all make our moral decisions for how we see things. Mm-hmm. But I all hope that we can believe that a person who sold cannabis, especially when you're nonviolent, should be eligible to earn the same good conduct credits that we allow murderers to obtain or sex offenders to obtain. I don't think that's a crazy assessment. And so I was there and I couldn't obtain it, and I just didn't feel like that was right. Of course I wanted to get out early, but I also made the decision that I'm not going to let not getting good time credits not push myself towards trying to better myself. But then I would apply for school and couldn't get into school because they give all the seats to the guys who can get good time because they want to help push people out, which means if you're not eligible, then you're not getting the school seats. So there's these, imagine that, indirect effects of policies that we don't think about. And so I was like, I have to do something better because there's other people here, and I started seeing drastic consequences happen. There was one guy who had a DUI. He didn't have his GED. He couldn't read and write. I helped him write a grievance for an issue in the medical ward, and when I was having to write the grievance for him, I think a lot of times, like, on a large measure, we misunderstand the true education level of people because we talk with them in your entire life. You've had to talk with people. You've developed social skills. You've gotten better. When people have to pull out a pen and start writing it down on paper, and you start having them like articulate deeper concepts, you start to see that their education level just ain't where we think it's at. And a lot of people don't commit crime just because they're criminally minded. There are criminally minded people out there. I'm just saying you can't put them all in one line. And so I was like, how am I going to make this right? How am I going to make it where we encourage people, we dangle the carrot to make them get it? And I was like, the only way I can make this happen is if I don't argue for myself. Because I said, if I argue for myself, I'm instantly just this selfish person who's just wanting to get out of prison. And nobody will listen to me. I'm just wanting to get out of prison. I did want to get out of prison. but like, so I started looking into it, and in Illinois Department of Corrections, they did a study. If you didn't have your GED, your recidivism rate was 89% within 3 years.
Wow.
If you had your GED, it dropped down to 47%.
Yeah.
Now, is 47% good? No, it's horrible.
Better than
But
89.
it's a lot better than 89%. And I tried to explain, so I started writing all the state senators, all the state legislators, all the state representatives. I wrote the governor's office. I wrote everywhere you could think of. And I outlined the studies, and I outlined the history of how this came about, because I just didn't believe. I was just like, people must just not realize this is happening. Like, that you can be worse than a murderer because you sold cannabis. Like, it just doesn't make sense. And the argument I made is, forget about being soft on crime. This is about being smart on crime. Because if your own studies cite it goes from 89 to 47, with the only difference being getting a GED. Now, let me ask you this. How hard do you think it would be when you're 30 to get up and admit you can't read and write?
Oof.
How hard do you think that would be when you're confronted with it to admit that as a man, you can't do that? Or would you just get mad, start an argument, and scream to get out of it? Or take offense if people start doing it? So they go into McDonald's, like when people were getting out and they'd go into McDonald's or they try to get jobs, like it would create instances which wouldn't set up successful pipelines for them to climb the economic mobility, right? And so I made the argument of, it's not about letting these guys out and make them smarter. When it reduces from 89 to 47%, that's not just 42 more people that's not coming back to prison in 2 years. That's 42 more people who didn't create 42 more victims.
Right.
So that's the way we need to think about this. And at the end of the day, I had one guy tell me, but Jason, but then they're just going to game the system. They're just going to do whatever they got to do to get the good time and get out. And I'm like, you mean they're going to learn how to read and write? Wow, they really showed us. And you can't fake it. Having a basic knowledge of education and the ability to pass a GED test. If you fake it, I don't even care if you got the skills. If you were just too lazy to go do it when you're out in the world, go get the GED, because merely saying you have one and being able to verify it will help you get on a path that's going to make you less likely to try. So, all these people. Michael Frericks, who's now the state treasurer in Illinois, wrote me back. I think what you're doing is great. I'm not going to help you do any of it, but I think what you're doing is great. And then Tom Cross, the leader of the Republican Party in the Illinois House, wrote me. He said, as we're wrestling with the budget, RC, because it makes sense, but it'll cost money. I'm like, it'll save money. But not even in the long run, like today, it'll save money today. So 2 responses after like $200. So I said, what do politicians respond to? They respond to the public and they respond to plans. So I'm going to their bosses. And I wrote every single newspaper in the state of Illinois. Wrote op-eds or opinionated editorials, found ways. It is so hard. I talk a lot. I use a lot of words. It is so hard in 300 words to explain a problem, explain a solution, and the call to action of how to actually get it in. But I found a way to do it. And I got published over 100 times. I had the Chicago Sun-Times headline a few times. I've been in the Chicago Tribune from a prison cell. Got a little more traction, still nothing's getting passed. So finally, in 2016, I got approved to go to a work release center. When I got to a work release center, my whole goal was to go to college. I wanted to be an engineer. I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to keep up with the traffic. But I just kept on thinking of all of the damage that's going on. Well, not damage. All the misintended consequences that were being created by policies which they didn't even intend to have written the way they were. Because when you read what a Class X sentence is, or how the good time credits get exempted, it went like this. Murder, comma, Class X sentence, comma, human disembodiment, human disembodied membership or something, aggravated child molestation. And what it was is just because it said comma, Class X sentence, and everything that was a Class X sentence got thrown into this. And I used to ask people, like, throw a cannabis dealer in a line with a murderer, a human body dismemberer, an aggravated sex, crime person, and ask yourself, which one of these don't look alike? Like, which one of these maybe was not intended to be there in 1978 when they were writing it? And when they wrote it, cannabis wasn't even a Class X. So the whole policy towards the good time didn't. It's when they upgraded it because they wanted to give longer sentences. So you had the legislators thinking, tough on crime, we got to be hard on drugs, we got to give these longer sentences. Oh, Class X gives a longer sentence. We'll just do that. We're changing to a Class X. Not realizing that the policy of everything gets guided behind that inside of the correction system. So when I get out, I'm sorry, I'm rambling, but I'm just gonna. So when I get out, I'm in the work release center. Counselor tells me if I want to go to college, I got to get a job, bring home checks, 40 hours a week. So I went out and got 2 jobs, worked 70 hours a week, did that for about 6 weeks. But then I'd already started out as a dishwasher. By the time the 6 weeks was around, I was a manager. By the 8th week, I was the operations manager because the business was failing, losing money left and right. I said, at the end of my second month as a manager, we lost $8.22 after losing thousands before that. So I wanted to put my own $9 into it. So I come back to him. I'm like, okay, cool. Let me go to college. He's like, you're working 70 hours a week. You can't handle college. I was like, trust me. I did what you wanted. Trust me. He trusted me. I signed up for college. The next 18 to 19 months, see, I can handle college because I already studied physics. I already studied chemistry. I already studied calculus. I already studied all this stuff while I was incarcerated. So I just had to go actually do the class of it. So for the next 18, 19 months, I worked 70 hours a week at the pizza place. I was even sleeping on the kitchen floor at times. I was going to college. I held a 4.0. I applied to get into the Phi Theta Kappa Honor Society, and they denied me because there was a bylaw that said that I couldn't be in there because I was in a work release center. And so I was like, are you kidding me? Are you absolutely kidding me? You're telling me because I sold pot 17 years ago that my 4.0 straight A's of grades isn't good enough to get into your community college honor society? And the lady was like, man, it's not me. It's just the policy. It's national. There's nothing that can be done about it. I was like, and when she said that, that's when I realized there's nothing to be done about it. I went back to work. I got on a computer. I used the internet. I emailed the national board. I explained what happened. They literally emailed me back and said, we're changing this right now. I was the first ever incarcerated student. I just got lucky with good timing. But so in the course, that reminded me of everyone who was still incarcerated and all the policy changes. And I just finished in the workers. I just finished. So I wasn't as scared to reach out to the political branches now that I wasn't technically still in the workers center. So I literally just started reaching out, and long story short, I ended up meeting the director of communications for the Illinois Department of Corrections. I skipped a part. This is important. So as I got out, I get on parole. I was supposed to have 3 years parole. I'm telling my parole officer how I'm trying to go to Stanford. I'm trying to go to Harvard. I'm trying to do this and that, blah, blah, blah. And I had to look crazy. But he said, well, tell you what. And he said, I already talked to your counselor at the work release center. I know you're doing the right thing. I'm going to stay out your way. And I ended up getting off parole in 5 months. After 4 or 5 months. It was supposed to be 2 years. I honestly think it's because he started to believe that I was going to get into one of those schools, and he didn't want to do the paperwork to have parole transferred. Long story short, I ended up getting very, very lucky. And I was smart. I did the hard work, but it takes a lot of luck. I say I must have flipped a quarter and landed heads 37 times, and I got into Stanford. So as a transfer, it was 3,000 that applied, and 24 of us got in. I got very, very lucky. But then all of a sudden, on the Department of Corrections, all these people, I got that fancy Stanford S. Isn't he so amazing? I'm the same guy before an admissions officer drank 1 too many wine coolers and checked the wrong box on my application. Admitted instead of denied. That's it. I'm the same person. But the Stanford brand brings something with it. And Illinois Department of Corrections reached out and wanted to talk about how I was so rehabilitated. I'm so proud. And I was like, I wonder how many Stanford scholars are sitting there and can't get good time. And they're like, what do you mean? Long story short, I was able to convince a lot of state reps and people to change policies, and every single thing that was published in a newspaper arguing for the prison cell used before has now been changed in the state of Illinois' prison policy system. A buddy of mine named Shane Crutchfield, who got 40 years in prison for a couple of ounces of cocaine, who I knew before going to prison, is now earning good time credits for rehabilitative acts. He's been long incarcerated. I was not included. He calls me. it's great. I love hearing about how he's working in industries, learning how to weld and all this other stuff. Because now he can get in, he can get the spots, he can get good time. Equalizes the playing field. So and then long story short, IDOC asked me if I'd be willing to do a video. Of course, I was ready to do a video, brag about all these great policies that they're innovating. So I got that done. So then after that, I go to Stanford. I met a computer science professor named Mehran Sahami. We have a Gmail account. He was one of the early pioneers of Google, and he created your spam folder. There's always been in your spam folder. And he just showed me the powers of computer science. And I started seeing everything that could be done with it and the ability to make change on a massive scale for humanity that I would not be able to do without it. So I made the stupid decision to spend all of my college years doing nothing but studying and getting my brain beaten by computer textbooks, programming, finding bugs, learning about artificial intelligence. I spent 3 years and I finished it. I graduated from Stanford with my degree in artificial intelligence. I considered law school, but I decided artificial intelligence is close enough to me. So there's a little rundown. It's probably a little long, but there's a lot.
Jason, you're one of my favorite libertarians, and your story is just like so inspirational. And I could listen to you talk for literally hours. I mean, everything that has happened to you shows us what's wrong with criminal justice, mandatory minimums, like prisons, and to come out and be who you are. That's who you were before, obviously. Like, that's the person you were supposed to be. But to come out and be so inspirational, and not just like, oh, look at me, I graduated from Stanford, but like doing the work to make sure other people can be in your position. It's just so commendable. So thank you for being on with us tonight too.
Yeah, absolutely. Your story is inspirational on so many levels that I just was enraptured just listening to it. So very, very awesome. Thank you.
One of the things I often think about is that, like, when I was in there, I always try to find like a universal purpose, like what's the reason for being there. And one of the things I noticed is, like I said, that like a lot of people, I wish people were just smart enough to make good decisions to motivate themselves and be like, I don't have a GED, I should go get that. I don't have skills, I should go get that. I don't know how to read and write, I should go get that. But you don't go to prison because you've made this excellent path of decision choices along the way. And walking into a jail cell just doesn't magically change the way you do your decision process. Using greed, which there's another system that's used with economics that's understanding this power. Using greed, you can motivate people that will create positive effects for the rest of society. And I was like, I just noticed that we should use greed to motivate people to be smarter, and therefore they commit less crime. But one of the things that I noticed that can't be done through greed is there's a lot of people in there that are just suffering from mental health. Mm-hmm. Our prisons and jails, it became de facto mental health holding centers. And there's a stigma to it, even in prison. It's like, if you're going to go on the call line to go get meds, like, you're paraded around the camp. Everybody knows that you're going to go get your meds. And it's kind of sad because it's discouraging people from getting kind of mental health care that they need. And so that's what I'm actually trying to work towards now. It's like trying to find a way to make sure that we can streamline mental health care and make it so that.
It's amazing that you say that, because I actually went to the Wake County, North Carolina Sheriff's debate last night, which was hosted by the Libertarian Party. And several of the candidates come from a detention background, and they were saying that in North Carolina, 47% of those that are in jail, not prison, but jail, have serious mental health issues. And they're just in a revolving door, and they're being, just like you said, paraded around for their medicine. Well, and actually, a lot of these individuals, the only time that they get medicine regularly is when they're in the prison system, because there's no system or...
It gets worse than that. Here in about 10 months, I'm going to start my own company that has to do with it. I'm not going to quit my day job. up yet, but you know what I mean? What happens is my buddy, one of my best friends in life, with 13 years in prison, was in Texas. He did a horrible thing. He kicked in someone's door and beat him up. I don't defend his move, but he was one of the closest friends I could ever have. When I got to a work release center, I had a 10-minute break, and he drove hours from Chicago to come spend a 10-minute break just so he could hug me because we were finally outside the work release center. And he was struggling with mental health issues. And he finally went to go get treatment. And when he went to go get treatment, he didn't get a good fit. He felt like, the counselor and him didn't vibe. And he had access to resources that most people don't have. Like, at least he was able to get into an office and talk to a counselor. But he didn't feel like they were a good fit. He felt like he was judged. When he left, he's like, I'm not going back to that place. And then 2 weeks later, he walked into an alley in downtown Chicago and he put a shotgun in his mouth and he changed a lot of lives. And I just keep on going back to, he was such a good guy when I was locked up with him because he was in this controlled environment where you could easily get the mental health access that he needed. But are we really going to be the type of society that says these people that need mental health, we're going to throw them in a cage and that's how they're going to get their mental health? Like, are we going to depend upon incarceration to make sure people get the mental treatment that they need? And it's like, don't get me wrong, I'm not a bleeding heart liberal. I'm a libertarian. You know what I mean? But like, you got to look at the crime and the impacts of certain things. I mean, the funniest thing I've ever seen, I can't remember who it was, but Dax was in it. It was a movie, and he said, at the end of the day, when they throw you to prison in 2 years, it costs $70,000, and blah 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 blah, all this stuff. Wouldn't it have been better just to let me keep your car stereo? Like, it was like, I'm not saying that we should allow people to just steal stereos, but like a lot of the things that we're doing that we're incarcerating people for. Plug to my mother. She was in Tehama County. She got arrested with me for the box cannabis that she actually sent me. Got her life clean and sober, turned around, went and got her master's degree, did 2,000 clinical hours, was working in drug and alcohol, became her probation officer's boss's boss at one point.
Wow.
And she's seen this with the mental health. And she was actually in charge of pioneering one of the first mental health courts in Northern California because she noticed that we have these drug and alcohol courts for these people that are doing drugs and alcohol but really aren't crime motivated as much as addiction motivated, and that's shown by through their crime, like to support their habit. But then she'd see people that are struggling with like mental illness or PTSD and things like this, and they would get in trouble, but it would be unrelated to drugs or substance. It had to do with them just being mentally ill. Mm-hmm. And she's like, that same concept applies. Like, why are we just throwing them in boxes? And she pioneered, I think it's because I was still sitting in a jail cell, so it was really sensitive to her when people were just getting put in a jail cell when it wasn't like they were a bad person. So she's really inspired me and helped give me these thoughts. I'm rambling again, so I would shut up. It's all kind of related.
There's actually a lot of interesting ideas. I know there are some nations out there that have tried building communities for mentally health challenged individuals and having them live a normal life in this community, but their work and their efforts in the community actually pay for the community and pay for their own care. So, I mean, there's all sorts of solutions outside of locking people in boxes that can actually give individuals that need higher levels of mental health care still a productive life and allow them to contribute to their own needs and to their own care. So, I mean, it's just what types of solutions are the best for that individual, because there are individuals that are suffering with mental health that are in need of more continuous care, but locking them up in a box still isn't the right answer. So,
well, the solution I'm working on isn't going to solve everything, but I see it as a harm reducer. What I want to do is make it for those who already did have the courage to pick up the phone and call to try and get help. I'm creating a software that is going to make it so that they will be streamlined to a counselor that is actually trained. I don't want to get too much into what the actual software does, but it will reduce matching problems so that people like my buddy Clint are less likely to leave feeling like they were judged or mistreated. That's still going to happen. You could be the nicest counselor in the world trying to do everything you can. Sometimes if a person is struggling with mental health, they're still just going to feel that way. But I do believe there's instances where we can improve it. And yeah, it's been bothering me for about 1.5 years now. I've been working on it. It drove me nuts. I'm going to take the leap in 10 months, and hopefully that makes a very better difference.
That's
Sounds
great.
awesome. That really sounds awesome. I can't believe it's already 30 minutes into the show.
Oh, I'm great at talking, ain't I?
Yeah, you are. But, I mean, you, like I said before, you are inspirational when you speak. So that actually brings us over. Pardon?
Inspired.
Inspiring.
Inspiring. But that brings us over to our second half of the show, and one of my favorites, the Washington Weekly News Quiz, provided by PBS.
Fail on a national podcast.
There you go. Absolutely. So we'll see how we do at the news, and see how well informed we are.
I am not.
I'm going to guess Florida because the guy is just Florida. That sounds like a Florida governor.
So which state governor announced the new Surgeon General who doesn't support vaccine mandates? I believe you are correct. I believe that is Florida because I do remember hearing something about this, and it is correct. Governor Ron DeSantis, one of my favorites, because he creates a lot of interesting news.
And then I wonder why there's that whole Florida man controversy where you can just Google something about a Florida man and it'll always come up.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a whole thing about Googling Florida man and your birthday, and you'll get an interesting story. Mine was because I did it. I have to say, I will admit it. But Florida man dresses up as Santa Claus and hands out marijuana to children at a local mall.
Well, I didn't dress up as Santa Claus, and it wasn't at a local mall.
I bet he got less time also.
I'm sure he did. I am absolutely sure he did. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, we're all libertarians. I think we're all against vaccine mandates.
Yeah.
I want to clearly state I'm totally against the vaccine mandate, and I'm very, very quick to sign up and get the Moderna vaccine.
Oh yeah, I mean, I was vaccinated with the Johnson & Johnson. I think that out of the 3 options that are provided here in the United States, that was the best choice for me. You said Moderna, Valerie. I think you went with Pfizer, didn't you?
Yes, I was not given a choice.
Diversity of opinion on this point.
Yeah, but I mean, we chose to take the vaccine. Freely and willfully. When I went to the vaccine center, I even offered to pay for it. They didn't know how to handle that one.
I mean, I told you back in January when the elders were getting it that I was going to go and dress like an old person to jump the line.
Yes, and then they opened it up to saying that if you accompanied an elder, you would.
Yes, and then I was going to go kidnap an elder.
Yeah, exactly. I love that story. So.
This is a little off topic, but it's just so crazy. The more I bring it up, I actually sent it to Valerie. I was riding a city bike through New York, and I wasn't wearing my mask because I was on a city bike and I'm vaccinated. So I see this rally and I stop my city bike and I look and I'm like, are you kidding me? And there's this rally of people with this guy on the stage yelling, go give people COVID. Go get COVID and give it to other people. And it was a big rally. And I was just like, I can't believe that it's just.
No.
Yes.
That's insane.
Yeah, I was like, get back on your bike and get the hell out of there.
Yeah, Howard's answer is get back on your bike.
I mean, where does that stop? I mean, should I go get smallpox and start giving it to other people? Roll around in blankets and hand them out to the homeless? I don't know. I mean,
it's just I feel like I need to double down so hard on them against the vaccine mandate because I see all the craziness that it's turning into, and it's like I speak out against that so much, and I just feel insecure and need to double down that I'm still against the mandate. But
right?
No, absolutely.
You're not having a logical thought process.
No. Well, and this is one thing that I fault our auspicious politicians in this country. because they don't actually care about people. But they've politicized a pandemic. Mm-hmm. It isn't about protecting the individual. It isn't about protecting the community. It's, are you red or blue? And the fact that they've managed to do this disgusts me on such a new level that I don't even know where to begin. I mean, this should have never been politicized. It's a natural disaster. It's like saying that an earthquake in San Francisco was caused by the Democrats, so the Republicans are automatically anti-earthquake. That is the level of ridiculousness to me. But oh well.
Sorry, I'm derailing our quiz.
Oh yeah, trust me, I do that every week. Ask Valerie.
That's how we handle the quiz, because everything comes back to being a libertarian. So
this is why we barely finish this quiz every single week, because I successfully derail it. Next question. On Wednesday, General Mark Milley met his counterpart in a meeting in Helsinki, Finland. His counterpart was from Finnish, Russian, or Chinese. Oof. This was a big meeting. This was a really big meeting.
Well, I'm going to say Chinese just because I have a feeling that they probably want to keep Russian out of anything that they possibly could.
Well, it is Helsinki, Finland.
Oh.
Finnish?
Think about the geography there.
I think it's not China, because China was the one who he secretly met with, right?
Yes.
So I'm going to go with Russia.
I agree with you, Valerie. I would go with Russia as well.
Because you already know this answer.
Yeah, because you know me. I read news nonstop, and this is also on my family's doorstep. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So, yeah, according to CNN, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs Staff, General Mark Milley, met his Russian counterpart for about 6 hours on Wednesday in a productive meeting in Helsinki at a time of heightened tensions between U.S. and Russia. The meeting varied in various topics on issues worldwide. Yeah. A lot of it, actually, some of the European newspapers kind of discussed some of the topics that were reported, because obviously cameras were not allowed in. Mm-hmm. Nor were reporters, but some of the conversations that were discussed were Russian security on nuclear material handling. There was development of new Russian missile systems, the Iron Shield around Israel, and the new funding that's coming from the United States. There's a lot of things that were kind of talked about. If communication can be reopened between the United States and Russia, I think a lot of the tension that we have is kind of going to dissipate. But it's gotten really scary with the last administration on just how shut down lines of communication occurred with a lot of our non-allies, and Russia's one of them. Mm-hmm. I mean, as an Estonian, by my heritage, I am not a fan of Russians in any way, shape, or form, but you still need to talk to them. I mean, it's just, yeah. Any other feelings? Any other comments on this?
No.
Okay.
What's next?
On Tuesday, who did Donald Trump sue for the disclosure of his tax information? His niece, Mary Trump, his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, or his tax lawyer, Sherry Dillon?
Mary Trump.
Yeah.
She's the only one that's not afraid of him.
I know. It is absolutely great. Yeah. I mean, I'm not a fan of any of the Trumps, but, hey, she probably has the biggest set of balls in the family. I'll definitely say that. Yeah, suing his niece, Mary Trump. That's how much he loves family.
Yeah.
That because the Bible says we should love our family, and he's a very good Christian. So
if you have nothing to hide, you should definitely sue somebody.
Oh yeah, especially your family. I mean, yeah, just keep it in the family.
What on earth? This guy.
You know, I actually got to meet Donald Trump once briefly.
Really, how'd that happen?
It was at a steakhouse. You live in New York, right, Jason?
I'm working in New York. I'm technically in Jersey City.
Okay, so you know the old Helmsley building, right behind the old Pan Am building over by Grand Central?
Okay.
So in the tunnels, there's a steakhouse called Bobby Van's. And Bobby Van's happens to be one of Donald Trump's favorite steakhouses. So I just happened to be seated next to him for lunch one day. And I knew it was Donald Trump, didn't say anything, didn't make a big deal out of it. And after he finished lunch, he came over to me, said, "Thank you for not making a big deal out of me eating next to you." We had a 5-minute conversation. He left. And then when I tried to pay my bill, my waiter told me that Donald Trump had paid my lunch for me. So, yeah, that was my experience with meeting Donald Trump.
He was like kind of walk around New York City, didn't he? Like before he...
Well, yeah, before he was president, yeah, he walked around New York City just like a regular individual because New York is just that kind of town.
Yeah, no one cares.
No one cares. The majority of the migrants at the encampment at Texas border town Del Rio are from Mexico, Afghanistan, or Haiti.
That's the Haitians, right? Was it the earthquake or hurricane? They've had so many.
Both, and as well as a president assassination.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, a political coup still in the works.
So,
yeah, it's Haiti. 6,000 Haitians and other migrants have been removed from the encampment. Now, have you seen the footage of the Texas Rangers on horseback rounding these people up as they try making their way into the town?
Yeah. Just let them come in.
My God. There's one picture, and then they superimposed a block carving that's pre-Civil War of a slaveholder chasing down slaves. It's eerily similar.
I mean, that's what it looks like. Like what they came with, literally nothing. They're not coming to bring disease and guns and I don't know whatever people are afraid they're coming with. Just let them come in, start a new life, and pick where they want to live, where it's safe, away from hurricanes, earthquakes, assassination.
I'm going to be totally honest. Some of these people are potentially horrendous individuals, and they should go through some sort of check system and all of that stuff, because I don't want criminals to come in here. Just like we did in Ellis Island, we checked people for their health. Mm-hmm. Obviously criminal backgrounds back then couldn't be checked, but we checked people for their health, and if we had questionable health, we segregated them for X amount of time to make sure that they were healthy individuals. I think we need to reinstitute those types of ideas where we check people for their health and we check their criminal background before we allow them into the United States. But other than that,
what criminals would you let in?
What
criminals would you let in?
Probably murderers.
What about Class X felons?
No, I would not classify it.
Skewed and changed because, like, right now, you can't go to Canada if you have a DUI.
Right.
I have a DUI. I can't go to Canada because I fell asleep at a red light. Not because I was drinking.
Yeah.
Not because. What? Not because I was drinking. Not because I do drugs. But because I fell asleep at a red light, and I got convicted of a DUI because I was impaired at the time. I was driving while impaired. I was too tired, and because I was too tired and driving, I now can no longer go to Canada.
No, I just like to poke the bear when I hear people say certain things.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, yeah, there are, there are certain crimes. I think the crimes should be listed. I don't think they should be classified because obviously our classification system, in fact, most of our codification of laws is a problem. But yeah, I mean.
But also, most people that are like murderers or serial rapists or dismemberers are still in jail in their country. So I don't think that's why I don't think that that's a huge thing. Maybe they haven't been caught, but if you go, I read something today. If you go to a college football game, there's 100,000 people there, and you would be shocked to know the percentage of rapists, murderers, and whatever that are in that enclosed area. So, you don't know.
Well, there's also a lot of people out there with warrants for their arrest or for extradition or something like that. And, hey, we should play ball,
Just make sure they don't have smallpox. They can come in.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. Let's make sure we don't create a new pandemic.
Oopsie poopsie.
This week, who announced the vaccine mandate for all school staff and child care workers? Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser, or Philadelphia Mayor Jim Kenney?
I'm going to guess Chicago. I have no factual basis, but I guess Chicago.
Out of all of those, I think so too.
I want to say it was D.C., but I'm not sure because I probably would not have been. I'm so tired of mandates that I don't really read every article that I see with that. Jared says it's D.C.
No, my family's all in DC, but they haven't said anything. I just feel like I would have known something, but maybe they don't care.
Well, hey, that's a good selling point why it's not DC. So we're saying Chicago.
That's a guess.
It is DC.
Oh my gosh! See, nobody cares. Oh my gosh! Boop.
Yeah. I think we've already hit on vaccine mandates with an earlier question. I think we can just kind of fast forward.
Yeah, let's just. I mean, I feel like we've been talking about vaccines and vaccine mandates for like 2 years now.
Well, I mean, this is just over a year for our show, and we've been talking about Corona and vaccine mandates and
masks.
Masks.
I don't have your life.
Yeah, every week for 2 weeks.
Which company announced that COVID vaccine is safe and highly effective for children aged 5 to 11? Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, or Pfizer?
Pfizer.
Yeah.
I did
Big news right there. Pfizer is now highly effective in children as 5 to 11. Yeah.
I saw
they're expecting Moderna to actually follow suit with this in a couple of weeks because Moderna is just usually behind Pfizer just a couple of weeks, but Pfizer does grab all the headlines.
Yeah. Also waiting to see when the real vaccine is approved.
Joe, I totally agree with you. I cannot wait until we say Corona and default to beer. I agree.
Yes.
I endorse that statement.
Yeah, exactly.
One of our LNC members was in a clinical trial. I just said her name, but I don't know if it was maybe she doesn't want people to talk about it. She was in a clinical trial for a standard vaccine that hasn't been approved yet. Mm-hmm. And I said, I think when that comes out, anybody with any kind of hesitancy about that being mRNA will probably be happier with that.
There's 2 vaccines coming out that are traditional vaccines, from what I understand. One of them is made by Nova Brisk.
Yeah, hers was Nova.
Yeah. And there's somebody else working on a traditional vaccine as well. So, yeah. The 76th session of the United Nations General Assembly, which kicked off this week, is being held in Chicago, New York, or Washington, D.C. It's in the same city for
I used
all
to fancy
76
myself
years.
all the politics. I'm realizing that I have been lazy the last couple months.
Well, Biden spoke at the kickoff to the 76th session of the United Nations, and his speech was lackluster at best. But
Of course.
If I was just throw a guess out there, I'd say New York.
it's always New York. That's where the United Nations is based out of, and that's the only place that the General Session will ever be held. I mean, they do have the United Nations does have offices in Zurich and Geneva, but the headquarters is in New York. Yeah. And seeing that we're talking with a whole bunch of libertarians, I am not going to even begin discussing the United Nations. This week, which country pledged that they will stop building coal power plants abroad? China, Russia, or Japan?
Probably not China.
I would say Japan. If anybody.
Yeah. Jared said China. I feel like Jared keeps getting them all right. Is China? Oh, I feel like they're so unagreeable for international policy.
No. No.
Wow.
Well, China's really getting on board with the global warming kind of thing right now.
I mean, they're like the biggest country. They should be doing something.
Well, okay, so they will no longer invest in coal power plants abroad. That does not necessarily mean that the 44 coal-fired plants that are currently in the works in China are not going to get built.
Right.
Just that they're not going to build any more outside of China.
Well,
very important distinction, right?
There's a start, I guess.
China actually just pulled out of one coal power plant, I think in Zaire, because they're building a lot in Africa. China is investing very heavily in Africa right now. So if you want to know where the next center of production is going to be, it's probably going to be somewhere on the east coast of Africa.
I mean, there's so much of resources there that is
huge amounts of resources.
People just picture like deserts and huts everywhere, and it's really not like that.
No,
at
it's
all.
not. It's actually quite fertile, or parts of it are quite fertile.
Right.
And there are great ports. There are great natural ports that are completely unutilized on a lot of the western coast of Africa.
Yeah.
But no, China is no longer going to build any coal power plants around the world.
Is it amazing that we didn't say China?
I know. Jeez, we can actually enunciate
so
our words properly. Oh my gosh. It's like we're educated.
It's been so long.
And you have to be proud. I've already fast forwarded. We had a power generation question, and I didn't bring up nuclear.
I know. I was wondering. I was like, if you're going to talk about nuclear power.
I know. Select all that apply. Which statements are below are correct? Tuesday, the House passed a stopgap bill that the government funded at existing levels through December 3rd. Lawmakers are seeking to pass government funding legislation to avert a shutdown by November 30th. The House government funding bill includes $28.6 billion for relief from disasters, including Hurricane Ida and recent wildfires. Which ones are correct?
The third one?
Yeah, the third one's correct.
And then I don't know.
I think maybe one. Yeah, maybe. I don't know, but it sounds feasible.
The second one's tricky because I was going to say all three of them, and then I reread them after I read them out aloud.
I agree with Joe here in the comments. That's why I thought it was the third one, because it was some insane number of spending. Like, that's got to be it.
Well, yeah, the second one I thought was right, and then when I reread it, I realized it's wrong because it's September 30th, not November 30th.
That's like
But
next week.
otherwise, I was all ready to say all three of them. No, yeah. But the shutdown is for September 30th, not November 30th. The Democratic-controlled House passed a stopgap bill on Tuesday to the government funding at existing levels through December 3rd. And then, yes, of course, because if the government has a chance to spend more money, we always know that they will. So $28.6 billion are going to be released from the printing presses to relieve disaster, including Hurricane Ida and recent wildfires. There's also $6.3 billion to help Afghan refugees. So,
well, I don't like that they're spending extra money, but we messed them up, and now.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. We're going to be paying reparations in Afghanistan for a while, but hey, yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, I hate spending. I really do.
So bad.
It really is. It's
so bad. It's so bad, and everything is like so much more expensive right now. The inflation, it's only getting worse.
Yeah, well, what we really need to do is dust off Jerry Lee Lewis or Jerry Lewis and have the telethon again.
Telethon.
Yeah, exactly. Actually have Americans open their wallet and help each other like, well, we've always done in the past. So, hey. And the last question, select all reply. Actor Willie Garson, who passed away this week, was known for his roles in The Good Wife, Sex and the City, and White Collar.
Definitely Sex and the City.
Yeah, I know Sex and the City because that's what they've been talking about.
I'm trying to picture Willie Garson because I've watched all three of those shows and I can't picture which actor it is.
Well, we can.
Because Chris Noth was Mr. Big, right?
Yeah. Very good.
You know what I mean? So, I remember Alicia Florrick because then Chris Noth was also in The Good Wife because he was the husband. I can't remember his first name, something Florrick.
So that's Willie Garson.
Okay, yes, he was definitely in Sex and the City.
Yeah.
So I don't remember the choices now.
And the choices are The Good Wife, White Collar, and Sex and the City. We've already said Sex and the City.
I don't remember him in The Good Wife. He definitely didn't have a major role if he was in The Good Wife.
Jared is saying Sex and the City and White Collar. And he's been on a roll tonight.
Yeah, he really is.
Go, Jared.
Yeah.
Hey.
And Jared's right again. Thank you, Jared.
I can't believe we had an entertainment question this week.
I know. So odd for this one. It's one of the reasons why we left the New York Times, because everything became entertainment questions.
Things are getting less serious again.
Or it's a slow news week. Hey,
it has been really slow. Praise Jesus.
Well, actually, there's been a lot going on in the international community. But, we're Americans, so we don't actually talk about that.
Right.
Who cares?
Al Jazeera.
Yeah. 90%. That's actually pretty good.
Pretty good.
Yeah, pretty good.
It's no 4.0.
So we've got 2 minutes to kind of wrap up here. Jason, anything else that you want to kind of plug, talk about before we say goodnight?
Feel free to find my website, makecannabisnotmatter.com. That's my play on, you got Black Lives Matter and you got Make America Great Again. So I came up with a name that kind of conglomerated both of them, easy to remember, makecannabisnotmatter.com. It's the fear that I have of how AI will impact our algorithms towards bail in the future and other issues. And other than that, in a year or two, I'll have a good pitch on a startup I'm working on. So
there you go.
I can be found on Facebook if anybody really needs to find me.
So again, that is makecannabisnotmatter.com. That's pretty awesome. Valerie, anything you've got going on in the next week or so?
No, thank goodness. I'll be home this weekend. Probably go apple picking, eat some apple cider donuts, and just finally chill out a little bit.
Let me tell you, I was really excited. I went down to the local grocery store and there was some fresh apple cider. So fall is here. I'm very excited about that one.
I won a raffle basket at the Perspectives on Freedom event this past weekend, which I spoke at, and it had apple pie moonshine in it. So I'm excited to find some apple cider fresh apple cider, and then put some of that apple pie moonshine in there, and yeah, and
sounds
not watch
like,
the
sounds like good times to be had at the Sarwark House.
nothing crazy.
Yeah, and it's going to be a slow week for me as well. Just a lot of normal life stuff going on, not too much in the political realm. So kind of enjoying that right now.
Yeah.
But yeah. So on that note, I think it's time to say goodnight. So we'll see you here next week, where we'll have Alex Merced with us this week. Next week, Jason, thank you so much for being on.
Thank you so much.
It has been an honor and a privilege, and like I said, you are an inspiration, and your story is amazing.
I love it.
So keep fighting the good fight, and thank you for being a libertarian. Your work is tireless and sorely needed. So thank you.
Thank you.
On that note, have a good night, everyone, and we will see you next week, and fight for liberty.